Day in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and I'm coming to you from the other side of my office today. We had a little lighting switcheroo, so it feels a little unnatural, but probably good. And I managed to hide the mess, which is just over to the left that no one thankfully can see. We have a great show today. We have lots of questions and I know answers. Mayor Scott Galvin and Representative Rich Haggerty are with us. We've had so much funding coming to us from many different ways as a city, and so it gives us an opportunity to ask questions. And then we have a special guest with us today who's opened up a judo, you're going to tell me it's a dojo, a studio, a gym, or whatever those things are, Riley, when I have you on, and we'll talk all about what that is and what's happening there. So welcome everyone, and welcome Scott.
Good to be here, Samantha.
We had a very busy weekend. You must be exhausted.
It was very good.
Yeah, it was so nice. We had so many festivities. It almost was like, okay, well, what's next? Because there's so much. But it was a great treat to see Woburn come out, even in the bitter cold that we had.
No, it was a fun weekend from Wednesday on. We had a really nice time.
It really was. Last time we spoke, we talked about a city council meeting. You were kind enough this morning to send me notes around tax rates and things. Because of my work, I did not have a chance to go through that. So I'm going to ask you questions about tax rates next week after I've had an opportunity to actually look at all the great information that you shared. But I do want to talk about the federal American Rescue Plan funding, because that I have a little bit better sense of, and I did have a chance to look into that. So before I do that, part of how we're, at least I think how we're using those funds, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, is we are using the funds that have come to us to offset revenue losses that we had as a result of COVID revenues being down, I assume from things like hotel tax and things like that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how much our overall revenue loss did we have last year? I'm looking at kind of what the gap is that we're closing with it.
Yeah. So the last calculation, or the first calculation that we did, which is good through now, was like $3.5 million of lost revenue. In the formula for the calculation is pretty complex, but you run it 4 different times. We're scheduled to run it again in December 31st, and that allows you to, if you have to use that again at a further date. So right now, our revenue loss calculation, the first one that we're required to calculate, I believe runs through December 31st of 2021.
Okay. And for those who are watching, the delay, I assume, is because there's a lag between when things happen and when the city receives revenue from that, right? So hotels collect tax at certain dates, but the city doesn't see that for some period of time until the next quarterly reporting. Is that correct?
No. Well, I don't. They just they wanted you to do it. That's how they wanted to do it. They wanted it done. I believe.
Here I am coming up with some big mathematical. It's my economics degree, and none of it matters. It's just a process thing.
They asked for your first calculation. We give it to them, and you can use that calculation through a certain period. But again, the tax, when you set the tax rate, we set it in November, and it indirectly helped us in that. It indirectly helped us in that respect as well.
Okay, so 3.5 million of estimated loss might go up a little bit, won't go down, I imagine.
Yeah.
The rescue plan funds that we directly are using now, is it 2.9 million? What's
2.5?
2.5 million.
2.5 out of just short of 12 million. That's what we received. 12 million, and we get that in 2 different payments. They call them tranches. I don't know why they call them tranches, but they say we got one, immediately just prior to the end of our fiscal year. We got, back in May, I believe it was, we got the first payment back then, which is just under 6 million. And we should be getting another one sometime in the new calendar year. So we'll have all of our money by, I would think at the latest by let's say May of 2022.
Okay. Now, there are multiple ways that we could use those funds, right?
Four different broad categories.
Yeah, broad categories. One is revenue, make up for revenue loss. There's some infrastructure money we could spend. There's some
water and sewer, specific to water and sewer, you can spend it. That's the infrastructure they live in. Cable, broadband, and then premium pay.
Okay. And do you envision the additional, of the 12 million we're eligible for, will some of that go to things outside of revenue?
Oh, absolutely. Right? Yeah.
So hopefully this is figuring out you may already have this all figured out, right? But I'm just what will we be applying that to, and how have you gotten to that? So
the main purpose that we'll be using them for is probably water and sewer, because we haven't, water is the most important resource that we have in the city. Sewer issues are all, we have an aging sewer system, and we've been investing in that. Every year we invest in that to reline aging sewer lines. We also do the same thing for our water lines. We reline them, but we have some structural issues with sewer that we need to be working on. We also have issue with PFAS. That's the PFAS in our water system that we're going to be dealing with, and it's an expensive fix. So that's going to be quite a bit of money, and these ARPA funds will come in handy to address our water issues and our sewer issues. And one of the other things I know Rep. Haggerty will tell you as well is that there's a lot of money coming in. Not only money that the state had in the prior distribution from the feds, that they're working on, how that money is going to be distributed, how that money is going to be available to cities and towns. So we're looking at, where those pots of money are going, how we're going to be eligible to either get them through grant funding or, matching funds or whatever. So we're waiting for that money so we can leverage our ARPA funds to make them go even further with money that would come from the state legislature. And also the most recent package that just came out, the 1.3 trillion or 1.2 trillion that came out. There's a lot of money in that for infrastructure too, and we're waiting to see how that's going to trickle down to cities and towns, and how, again, we can use our ARPA funding to make that go even further with the funds that come from them. So the first, like I said, I hope this is the last time that we have to use any of the ARPA funds for revenue loss and revenue replacement. And we did, Samantha, last year, just to take you back, last year, the first year that we had significant revenue loss, we tapped our free cash. We used about $3.5 million of our own free cash to help us bridge that gap where we think, the revenues are down, and we were planning on them being down for 2.5 years. So we wanted to bridge that money, bridge that loss. And then by the time it came back, the money that we filled in would give the taxpayers a break. And we did that last year. And again, an indirect benefit of this money now will be to give the taxpayers somewhat of a break. That's not the reason we did it. It was for revenue replacement, but it does have the benefit of saving both residential and commercial on their tax bill.
Yeah. And in fact, we can't directly use it for tax relief.
That's right.
Because that's actually excluded from ARPA funding.
Yeah, and that's why I'm clear it was not, it's the indirect benefit, though. There is an indirect benefit, but
right. Because we are able to make up a revenue loss, we didn't have to.
We didn't have to use as much as use as much as our other sources, which like I said, it's not the purpose, but it has that. Sometimes it has the indirect effect of helping out.
Okay. And we have still 38 million-ish in the cash reserves. Is that an accurate number?
Our free cash was certified at 38 million.
Okay.
We do have stabilization fund. We have some other sources, but we're also our tax levy. We've got about 25 million in unused tax levy. So we're in good position right now, and that's one of the reasons, Samantha, why Standard & Poor's looks at us so strongly, is that we have been conservative in how we use our funds and how we prepare for a downturn, which right now we're navigating through, very well. Of course, with the assistance from the federal government and also from the state government, the governor and whatnot. So it's been a good team process, and you know, we're making our way through it, and we're hoping that this is the last year, or maybe next year there still might be an impact because of commercial valuations, you know, particularly in hotels, which we see down somewhat. So, you know, we're looking at that very closely.
Good. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for providing all that context. And we had, so we also, there was money allocated to the schools that were rescue plan funds. Is that part of the 12 million, or was that separate money? That was separate money, right? That's
a separate pot of money, which, you know, the superintendent and his staff determine how they used, and they've got a, you know, they've got like a two-year plan on how they're going to spend that money. The bulk of it, they have allocated to this year's budget. Some of it for one-time expenses, some of it, you know, of course, they had a very robust summer school program, which was well attended, and I think well needed to keep the students, you know, above the or on that learning curve so they didn't fall behind. So they've allocated a good portion of that to the FY21 budget, which we're in now. In the FY22, they've also got funds in FY23, or contemplated funds there as well.
Yeah, and part of that money was creation of new positions within the school, some of which are maybe temporary bridge services, and some of which might be more ongoing.
A significant number of new positions.
Yeah, it's like 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
I might have the number wrong, but it's quite significant. So do we anticipate using any of the incoming funds, either from the state or the reserve that we have now, to maintain those positions over time in the school system, or is it too early to tell that?
Way too early to tell, but that's one of the yeah, that is always one of the concerns, that when you have this funding, and I've talked at length with the superintendent and the business superintendent about, you know, you've got to have a plan when those funds go away, and it has to be sustainable, that you continue to maintain those positions, because the, you know, school budget is a part of the overall city budget, and you have certain limitations that you can do, and you can't live on, you know, free cash. It's not the way to do it, because, you know, your expenses continue to go up, and you can't keep using free cash to cover ongoing budgetary needs. You have to have a dedicated source.
Yeah. So last question on it. I appreciate you answering all of them. I'm sure as people see a capital influx coming to us from many ways, that there's lots of good ways we as a city can use this money. The water systems and sewer systems that you describe as one. Maybe there's some aspect of housing or mental health care, or you know, many things we as a city could use it for. In what ways do we want the community and different functions in the city sort of preparing to make a case for how they want to use those spends? Is that just done through normal department head operations, or is there unique processes because of this extra unusual funding sources?
Well, like I say, and I mentioned this earlier, that the funding is very very appreciated, but the funding that's going to come from the state and from the federal government will be specifically allocated, you know, through grants, through a grant process, and we don't know where. What we do know, the broad pots of money, where it's going to go, but we don't know how that's going to be distributed, and we're going to have to look at that. With regard to, I think what you're asking me, the ARPA funds, those are specific, and you know, we're clearly going to use those funding for infrastructure. That's what we're going to do. And one of the things that I think that people sometimes might see if they're, you know, reading the Globe or some other papers, is they're looking at some of these other cities and towns that got a significant amount of funding because they're considered big cities. The CDBG, the big cities, we're not termed a big city, and they under the ARPA guidelines and formulas, they like say this, you know, and I'm going to say Newton. I know they've got in excess of $60 million. So they're looking at some of these different, different options, and which, you know, quite honestly, we don't have the luxury of looking at. our need to use that funding is specifically for infrastructure. And we do have water and sewer needs, particularly, like I said, with water, which we consider, our number one resource. That's where we're going to be looking to spend the money. The sewer infrastructure, which saves us money in the long run. Those are really important needs, and that's where we're going to be focusing our ARPA funding.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Do we have another clinic in the schools for 5 to 11 scheduled?
We have the second shot coming up December 11th.
Okay, so that's just for folks who already had one. It's not.
That is, and we had a call today talking about, that, just that question about when are we thinking about, having another clinic to the 5 for 11s, and as of today, we're at 30% who have one shot.
Okay.
Roughly 1,000 out of 3,000 have got their first shot, which, is I think pretty good. It's right along average. It's not, we'd like to certainly have more. I mean, but the question becomes, when you have, like I said, we had a clinic that was scheduled for 400 people. We had 300, which I think was good, but you'd really like to, we would have loved to have seen that whole 400 fill up. And now we're going to try to figure out when we have the next clinic, how we can get even better participation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. And I think there are I know a lot of families who are finding appointments, but they're kind of far off and they're scattered. Yeah. They're having to sort of take a kid out of school to go travel to a town, 20 minutes, 30 minutes away, which for those who have cars and vehicles is fine. But for those families who rely on public transportation, that could be a little bit more challenging for them.
And we're also, Samantha, I just got my booster today. I got it at the Target CVS, and I scheduled this 10 days ago. So that even the booster is, there are places to get it, but the scheduling is 10, 14 days out. Sometimes you can't get it as close as you like. So we're looking at, scheduling a booster clinic for people to make it more convenient for them. And, we try to do multiple clinics, but we're on the planning stage with that. And,
okay. Great. Well, thank you for answering and clarifying so much around that funding. I really appreciate it. Next week, I'll have some questions specifically on tax rates. I'll have a chance to look through all the stuff you said.
The classification, I could also volunteer up John Conley. He is the chief appraiser. So,
great.
He could be available if you'd like.
Come on next week with you. Let's definitely do that.
I'll have him come on. We'll both do it together. And, you'll really have to do your homework though, if you want to question him.
Wow, that sounds like the gauntlet to throw down. Now I'm going to have to really dig into my economics background. It's been a lot of years since I did anything but budgeting, but no, I really appreciate it. And I think it is a complex issue, and as much as we can simplify it for people and help us all understand.
Yeah. And again, it's all like, it's all on the city's website. It's on the recent news. It's also, if people are interested in looking at the classification and information on that, they certainly can go right to the city's website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us. Anything you want to add before I bring Rich on?
No, that's good. I think Rich has some good news for you with, I'll let him break the news, but he's got some good news, and particularly on the library. Rich, you're going to talk about that, and I'm going to sign out, but thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Scott, for joining us. I appreciate it. Rich, welcome as always. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you having me today, and opportunity to give a little update on some of the different things going on, and happy to be here.
Great. And it was such a pleasure seeing you and lots of folks this weekend at all of our festivities that we had. So let's start with the library, since Scott mentioned that. I know that there has been legislation long in process around limiting the term of library trustees. Yeah. And for those who have been loyal watchers, there's a sort of a long history of how we got there, which we won't repeat today. But where are things at?
Sure. So the long and short of it is the bill's now on the governor's desk. The hope is, and the anticipation is that he'll be signing that before the end of the week. So that's great news for our library to get new members on the board, to get a full board in place. As you mentioned, the legislation did away with lifetime trustees, which is, of course, a recommendation of the Mass Library Board of Commissioners. And as you indicated, we'd had some issues there about a year ago or so. with the mayor's assistance and of course his leadership in the city council, they passed the home rule petition back in, I want to say it was maybe April or so. So it's been working its way through the legislature. It never works as fast as we want it to, but of course, generally in government, we try not to change things too quickly. There was a very deliberative process that it has to go through when you're making any type of home rule change for charters and things of that nature. And we're excited that it's close to getting over the goal line here and to be able to give the city a full library board. And I'd be remiss if I didn't just give a shout out to Hermaine, who's just doing a terrific job as our library director, by the way. She's such a nice person and doing a great job.
Yeah, I agree. It's great to see people using the library so lovingly again. So I love to see that. We've had some great new staff members added as well, and I'm sure there'll be more to come. Thank you for that update. One of the things I wanted to touch base on before we switch to funding is you gave a really nice shout out to small businesses, right? We had Small Business Saturday last week. Just wanted to kind of give you an opportunity to talk about your point of view on that, and maybe give a shout out to any of the businesses you personally shop at, or anything we're doing legislatively to make sure and support those businesses, partly because it's a really good thing to do, but also with supply chain issues and things, it's actually in labor shortages, supporting some of those small businesses is actually how many of us will fulfill our holiday shopping lists and things this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Small Business Saturday was, of course, this past Saturday, and it's never been more important to be standing up for small businesses. My family's got a long, proud history of running a small business in our community, and for me to be able to shop local is always the way to go. I was at Tremonte on Saturday night doing pickup for takeout, and buying gift cards is always a great opportunity for folks. That's one area where I think people sometimes overlook. Do stocking fillers. Maybe you can't go in and spend $100, but maybe you can go in and spend $5 or $10 on a stocking stuffer or for a coworker, those types of things. Next week on Friday, I think I'm doing a small business tour over in Reading to go to some of the different businesses in that area. And but yeah, get out there, shop local, shop small. I'll be with you.
I love it. There's so many wonderful entrepreneurs and Woburn residents, whether their shops are here or they work from home or they have shops at other places. It's really a great treat to do that. So thanks for talking about that.
Etsy's doing something too. I just want to mention Etsy, I think, is doing like an option now where you can go on there and actually specify that you want to shop local. And it gets folks immediately in your kind of geographic area. So it's kind of a cool option for folks if you're looking for personalized stuff locally. That
is very cool option. I'm a huge Etsy shopper, but I had no idea that I could actually narrow down. I'm going to go check that out now. That's really, really great. Etsy is such a great marketplace for artisans and people doing really interesting and creative things. So I love it. There's so much going on, Rich. I have like 1,000 things to talk to you about. So I want to talk a little bit about, sort of the week of Hanukkah that we kicked off yesterday because we were taping on Monday. And things seems like a great opportunity to talk about a new education act around genocide and that was recently passed. Tell us a little bit about what that bill or law now is and kind of what happens next now that that's in place.
So the bill, the genocide education bill, is on the governor's desk as well. I anticipate he'll sign that in the coming week or so. And essentially it requires education around the topic of genocide for middle and high schoolers. And, we saw obviously, particularly in the 20th century, a lot of, genocide activity from the Armenian genocide during World War I to, of course, Holocaust pre-World War II, throughout World War II, and then of course even the Cambodian genocide in the 70s. So it's a topic that has to be remain on on the front burner, and we really need to spend more time than what we are right now in our schools talking and educating about the events of our history so that we don't repeat them. It's never been more important in some ways, really, to spend some time talking about that. One of the other pieces of the bill, and there is some flexibility, I should mention, for school districts to form this to fit their needs, which I think was important for flexibility purposes for different school districts. But there is a funding mechanism in there as well. Some of the fines from hate crimes across the Commonwealth will be directed to the trust fund specifically targeted to support this bill, so that school districts aren't, kind of alone in trying to fund that aspect. But, I remember, candidly in 8th grade, we spent an enormous time talking about the Holocaust, talking about the 6 million people who were murdered, talking about it we talked about it in Spanish class. We talked about the numbers in math class. We talked about, the impacts to the culture of the Jewish population in English class. And some of that I think has been lost. So, there's been a lot of talk about this over the course of the last year or so, and I was proud to be a co-sponsor in the bill, and looking forward to having the governor sign that and begin that education process for our youth moving forward.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to not repeat our history there, and to remind it. And the bill is very well-rounded in the sense that it provides some funding to help update curriculums and do things where it might be needed. So thanks for that update. I think that's a really important one. I want to talk a little bit about all the money coming in. So we chatted with, I know it sounds like we just have money gushing in everywhere, right? And it's not quite as a waterfall of free cash as it may sound, but there is a unique opportunity for us to take advantage of a lot of funding that is coming from the federal government, both through rescue plan funds, but also potentially infrastructure bill funds that many communities and states will be fighting over and trying to grab. Fighting might be too dramatic a term, but we'll certainly all be making a case for how we want to spend that money. Give us a sense of, I know there was sort of a Senate bill that was passed for ARPA funding, and the House has a separate bill. So my understanding of those things need to be reconciled today. Is that accurate?
Yeah, correct. So essentially right now it's in, it's in a committee being hashed out between the two branches, the chairman of Ways and Means, and they're having that conversation, trying to get us to a point we can get this over the goal line. But, we've spent a lot of time talking about this bill. As you indicated, it is a big chunk of money, but it's once in a generation money, most likely. And we viewed this as a real opportunity to get a lot of public input. We spent from June through the end of September with the chairman of Ways and Means and Aaron McIlwain and the chair of federal stimulus spending in Dan Hunt, holding public hearings, listening to folks, understanding where these dollars need to be directed. We got about $5.2 billion as a Commonwealth in ARPA funding, and we have about, I think it's 4 to 5 years to spend those dollars. So we wanted to make sure we were doing it right. Time was of the essence in a lot of ways, and we released some of those funds early to get them in the hands of communities who needed it most. But we also felt it really important to, again, spend some time listening to folks and understanding where these funds should be directed. So housing is a big chunk of where we're spending the money, $600 million for housing. We're spending a portion of that on education, of course. As your conversation with the mayor indicated, a lot of our education dollars that came from the feds actually went directly to school districts. It didn't actually flow through the Commonwealth. So our funds for education are largely targeted at our higher institutions of higher education. The environment, we're going to spend some money trying to shore up, communities and give them the opportunity to be able to, directly access grants to be able to deal with resiliency issues in their own community. Every community is different. Woburn's different than Bourne, or Waltham's different than Salem. Also in the environmental front, we're going to direct some resources towards building out some infrastructure for our ports to be able to bring in wind energy. We view wind energy as a giant part of our energy future here in the Commonwealth. It's been joked that the shores of the Commonwealth are the kind of like the oil of the Middle East. So we're going to spend a lot of time building up our ports to be able to get that wind energy back to homes and to businesses who need it, and to get us in a clean energy direction. Workforce development, we're spending money on that, including $500 million towards folks who were working during the pandemic, who were on the lower income side, be able to give them some support and some direct payments. And then we also spent some money on economic development, including $500 million for businesses to help them who have been impacted by the rising cost of the unemployment, trust fund issues. We saw a lot of fraud on that topic, and we've taken several measures over the course of last year to address it. But we're going to spend some money to be able to lower unemployment rates for our small businesses across the Commonwealth. So those are kind of the heart of where we're spending the money. I guess the last would be healthcare. We're spending, I think, $700 million to support our hospitals and our healthcare system to make sure that we help them build back better, so that they're in a good position to be able to continue to serve the populations we need them to serve. And we know that they were, adversely impacted financially, of course, by the pandemic and by the fact that a lot of elective surgeries were delayed, and that's a big chunk of how they make their money. So it's about $3.6 billion, I think, is what we finally appropriated. 1 billion of that was from last year's surplus. About 2.6 billion was from directly the ARPA funding. So we have about 2.6 billion left in ARPA funding that will continue to kind of monitor and figure out where that should be directed next. But all of it, in my view, should be spent towards kind of building the Commonwealth we want to see in the future. We don't want to use one-time money for ongoing expenses, and we're excited about the opportunity. And I think we're going to continue to spend some time listening.
Well, I love it. And those numbers sound very large. When you start to parse those out to individual cities and communities, they are very, very helpful, but it becomes a complex formula. Sort of practically speaking, what pieces are there, specific things that we should expect in Woburn as a result of that? I think you've in the past talked about some making some more of our playgrounds more inclusive in terms of who they serve, and some rehab money is probably the wrong word for it, but some money to invigorate downtown businesses.
Yeah, so those two pieces were kind of direct payments that the city will be able to get, and as you indicated, one was $125,000. An amendment that I filed that will hopefully help the city of Woburn continue down the path of making their playgrounds more accessible for all of our kids. And as you mentioned, an additional $125,000 was appropriated as well to help our downtown businesses. And that could be infrastructure. I think that the mayor and the city council will have those conversations about how best to utilize those resources. But we want to also spend some time listening to businesses downtown and figure out what they need, whether it's improved sidewalks or whether it's maybe some murals on some of our buildings to dress things up, or replanting of trees, better lighting, all those types of things that can be kind of talked about. And the city, of course, is going to have access to tons of grant opportunities that we're going to create, whether it's our housing authority, who will be able to access additional resources to be able to improve energy efficiency in our housing properties, or new roofs, or things of that nature. So, and again, even on the business side, you're going to see folks who are going to be able to tap into some of the housing dollars that we're putting aside to be able to, create new housing opportunities for folks who need it most, and help them get projects off the ground. And then there's, of course, economic development, issues that will come out of that, job creation issues that will come out of that will positively impact our local economy. So there's a lot of ways I think the city of Woburn will benefit directly from these resources.
That's fabulous. It's almost a little bit overwhelming. How can we as residents make sure to support you in the legislation ends, but also support the different folks who might be going for grants, or, just sort of stay on top of all this stuff and make sure that we're taking advantage of all the things that are available to us? Any guidance or advice you'd give, sort of the average resident?
Yeah, I mean, reach out to my office is a great way to do it, and we can spend some time talking about specific programs that I'm aware of that folks are applying for. Mass Cultural Council, we directed $125 million to the Mass Cultural Council to help our cultural sector in the Commonwealth, and we know we're going to have some folks locally who are going to be applying for that. So definitely reach out to my office. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we did put a part of the appropriation in there to make sure that we're really transparent in how we're utilizing these dollars. So all of this is going to be up on a website so people can see directly where the ARPA funding is being spent, and they'll be able to monitor it, from the comfort of their own homes to make sure that they know what their government's doing and where those dollars are being spent.
That's excellent. I love it. And hopefully the infrastructure bill will bring additional money even into the Commonwealth, and then to the cities and such as well, which I know is a little premature, but I'm sure we're starting to spend that money in our heads. We have lots of ideas where that can go, right?
Yeah, it's a big chunk of change. I mean, you're talking, again, another probably at least $9 billion, maybe as upwards of $12 billion. And, about probably 4 or so will go to our roadways, and then everything from our airports to our clean water systems to helping, again, climate resiliency efforts, all those areas, and be able to find some real resources to be able to support our communities. One area we should definitely direct some of those resources is to enhance our Chapter 90 dollars, that local communities like Woburn and Reading will be able to get more money to be able to pave their local roadways. It's an area where we haven't invested enough. The cities and towns, in my view, have been kind of picking up the slack on that. And it's time the Commonwealth write a bigger check to help local communities pave their roadways and take care of the sidewalks, handicap accessibility, all those issues.
Yeah, well, that's an exciting opportunity to start thinking about. Thank you, Rich, for catching up with us. Last little thing before I let you go. There is, we've talked about this in the past, and I know it was done in sort of the housing workshop, but there's some really valuable fuel assistance programs in place as it's starting to get much colder and we're facing winter heat. Where should folks go who might want some more information about fuel assistance programs?
Yeah, so email me directly, because we can get you in touch with the right folks. It's LIHEAP is the name of the program, the Low Income Heating Assistance Program. At the end of the day, there's a lot of resources out there right now to help people be able to keep their homes heated during the winter. This has been a long running program. It's been fully supported by both the Commonwealth and the federal government. Feel free to email me, richard.haggerty@mahouse.gov. And we can get you in touch with the right folks at the state. There is no fee to apply, which is important to remember in the event that somebody were to reach out to you and say that there's some type of fee. There is no fee for this program for you to apply. They go through their hoops and figure out whether or not you're eligible or not. And then at that point, hopefully be able to provide you with some assistance to be able to, particularly this year, given the increase in the cost of gas and oil.
Yeah. Excellent. Rich, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of that progress. There's a lot of good things going on in our Commonwealth. We're lucky to have you speak with us and check in quite regularly. We appreciate it.
Always anything I can do. Thanks for everything you do for our community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, we're going to change gears completely here, and what we're going to talk about one of our own new businesses, which is an exciting thing. Riley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
So, Fuji Martial Arts. Did I get the
Yep.
I got the name right? Right.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
Is judo a dojo, a studio, a gym? What do you call it?
All the above. So we're actually we have a few different martial arts that we focus on here. We have judo, which is where my background is from, and one of my business partners. And then we have jiu-jitsu, which is my other business partner's expertise. We also have wrestling as well. And we're constantly growing and evolving, really just to be a full, well-rounded training center where anyone can come to reach their own personal goals through martial arts and grappling.
So I love it. So 3 of my 4 children spent time with karate, so different disciplines, but
Yep.
They learned an incredible amount outside the dojo, right? So they certainly learned moves and self-defense and skills, physical body skills, but they also learned leadership and self-discipline and a lot of confidence about being in front of groups and a lot of really things that when we started it, I just wanted them to have an activity, right? Like
Sure.
I think I
Yeah,
had
of
a
course.
kid who loved Power Rangers, and so we're like,
Yeah.
I want to check this out, right? And we were really fortunate, and we had a really great experience. But each of the martial arts is different in its background and discipline and sort of philosophy. Tell us a little bit about what you do and your training.
Sure. Absolutely. So like all martial arts, I truly believe that children specifically, I think it's phenomenal for adults. I think it's an activity that's often overlooked for adults as well, because it is something that you can do at any age, unlike other football, soccer, your more mainstream sports is a little bit harder to stay in when you're a little bit older. But the main goal of our program, regardless of your own, physical abilities or your own actual character development, is that life skill and leadership development, using martial arts as a tool to do that. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find any martial arts school that doesn't have a sort of life skill component to it. And that's for us is why we think it's really important to continue to spread martial arts in the community, to make it more accessible and to make sure students have and families have an opportunity for their child to be the best versions of themselves. Because it's not that easy right now, especially coming off of COVID, specifically now with the digital age that we're living in with kids. It's a really different world than it was when I was growing up and when, adults were growing up. So having a positive environment where kids can truly be themselves, they're treated the same, they're yelled at the same, and they have the same expectations. Obviously just working to be, like I said, the best versions of them. it's really important for us here at Fuji Martial Arts to make that a reality for parents and families in the community.
So I am familiar with karate because
Mhm.
of my kids. I'm less familiar. I actually have no familiarity really with judo
Yeah.
and jiu-jitsu. Tell us about what makes, I know each one is special in its own way. Tell us what makes it, those sports unique.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. We have a lot of families who first call in. They're, hey, I'm looking for karate. Okay, we can definitely help you out. And then we go into how karate is a little bit different. And most parents or families or people even just kind of think, like karate is just what it's called, right? It's just, and what we do inside, it doesn't really matter. It's just karate. The biggest difference between judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and karate is a striking martial art. There's punches, there's kicks. It's there's a sense of athleticism to it, right? It's a very, very cool sport and martial art to watch, but it focuses more on the martial art aspect of it rather than the sport aspect of it, where judo, jiu-jitsu, and our program specifically is we have it straight down the middle, where there is that martial art component of self-respect and respecting your opponent, respecting your things, and that leadership side. But we also have the sport aspect of it as well, where judo specifically, we're throwing and we're pinning, and we're trying to get people onto their backs and pin them. Jiu-jitsu is mostly ground fighting, where you're trying to submit someone on the ground. Wrestling, it's not like we see on TV where they're bashing chairs over someone's back. It's high school traditional wrestling.
That's very theater wrestling, right?
Yeah, and that's what the funniest thing is when it was like, professional wrestling is what you see on TV with John Cena and The Rock, where it's like, that is not what we do. But the main thing, obviously, a lot of people call and say they just want karate, but no one has ever called us and said, I want my kid to be the next Olympic champion. I want my kid to be the next, national this. Everyone calls because they're looking for them or themselves for self-defense, fitness, confidence, respect, or discipline. And the goal of every single class is to have every single student sweat, smile, and learn. That's it. No one has called me to say, my kid is the next this. No, your kid's the next themselves. And we're going to help, like I said, help them kind of grow in accordance to their values and their beliefs, just in another positive environment. And it's the biggest difference I do see, though, between the martial arts is everyone has their own speed. Everyone has their own interest. Everyone has their own kind of language that they speak in terms of their own self-care. For example, athletes call it, call sports psychiatry. They go to a sports psychologist. Other people, they just go to their regular therapist. It's the same thing, just a different way of interpreting those things, right? We have positive thinking and visualization, no different than what some families find in yoga. They're very similar things. It's just the way and the language that we're approaching it is what separates this program from other programs I've found.
Thank you. That's a really nice way of explaining it. So for those folks who have never tried this before, of any kind, maybe they've not just tried judo, but they haven't tried any kind of martial art. What kind of classes do you offer for those folks who might be a little unsure of what to expect?
Sure.
A lot of people grow up playing baseball and soccer and tennis or other things, but this is a very different kind of interaction and athlete in a different way. Yes,
absolutely. And that is one of the biggest pros we find with working with kids is that, mom or dad have to be mom or dad. They can't be that, the drive home car coach, right? They can't be the quarterback on the side trying to help out. And we know it all comes from a place of love, but obviously just them being mom or dad, loving and supporting their child is really what we want them to do, right? And we're going to work with mom and dad to make sure that we're delivering the messages they want. But a lot of people, when they do a little research on us, my business partner is Jimmy Pedro, is an Olympic bronze medalist. He was an Olympic judo coach. My other partner, Travis Stevens, was an Olympic silver medalist, a jiu-jitsu black belt, and they think my kid is not, or I am not an Olympic. Like, that is not what I'm looking for. And it's like, that's okay, because it's not what we're providing at this location. We're just using those same ideals of an Olympic medalist, or the peak of sports in the everyday recreational program. So regardless of what your goals are, like I said earlier, is we're going to tailor the class and the experience to fit your needs. So again, you can be the best that you can be. Our instructors here are all world class in the sense that they've either been competing at a high level for a long time, or they've worked with hundreds of athletes in the area in different sports. And now have come together through jiu-jitsu and judo and wrestling to help each individual person, like I said, just be them and be happy with who they are and help them be the best they can be, while also making sure that they're comfortable, right? It's very uncommon for someone to roll onto their back. It's very uncommon for someone to roll over their shoulder. And we understand that. We're not expecting, this isn't like what you see in Cobra Kai, where they're saying, quiet, that's not the style. It's a positive atmosphere. So we make sure that every student who comes in, if they have no experience, I don't want to say it's a handheld experience because most people don't like that, but it's a positive experience with they're doing what the class is doing at maybe a level step or two down, depending on where the class is. So we have a very structured curriculum that we follow. So for example, if we do 8-week cycles, so if we're on week 4, we're halfway through the cycle and we've already learned a good basis of a technique. So if we have a student join on week 4, we're obviously not going to put the expectation on them to be where everyone else is, but we will make sure that we're tailoring the instruction so they can get the most out of the practice session, getting a great workout and learning and just being stimulated in all their senses.
I love it. Where is the training center?
We're in West Cummings Park. We're right across the street from Staples and right next to the UPS store in Woburn. It's been awesome. Everyone here at Cummings Property has been amazing to work with. All of the other local businesses I've interacted with in terms of we have like a shake place across the street, Empower. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't going to Be Good Burgers a lot more for lunch. And the UPS guys have been amazing, and everyone here has been awesome and very welcoming. And one of my personal goals for this school is to be involved in the community a lot more. Part of the martial arts is not just the big culture and the big core value is helping others and giving back. And so we are looking to be involved in the community in any way, shape, or form, whether it's in terms of donating for a certain cause, donating an item for something. I know we just joined the Woburn Chamber of Commerce, which has been awesome. We've been working with the executive director there, Chris, who's been an amazing asset in terms of helping us get on the right track. So we'll be donating something for their annual gala that they're doing. But our goal is to really help out any way, shape, or form we can, from the school systems to other small local events that the town is holding, just to, one, help us get out there a little bit and see the community, but also show that like we are what we preach. We want to give back and help out. We don't just want to take. We want to give back our time, our energy, our efforts to help grow the community, because we found that, I was doing my research in Woburn, every single school had a phenomenal tagline that was, kind of what we were looking for, being the best versions of ourselves and growing together. And that's really kind of hit home with me, because that's really important for kids nowadays, that to understand that every kid is different and you're not supposed to be like Johnny or Sally, you're supposed to be you. And who is you? Well, we're going to find out together and work together for it.
I'm glad you raised it. In my experience, which has been very limited to my children, but in my experience, one of the things that we were so drawn to with the martial arts was the focus on self, and one child with a green belt may have gotten there in a very different way than another.
Yes.
And I thought that was wonderful, and I really enjoyed watching 3 different children and all their dojo mates, right?
Of course.
Grow tremendously over the years that we were there, but to grow in very, very different ways and very different paths, and all of that was good. So I'm glad that you raised that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have 3 kids myself, and I have 3 extremely different children. I feed them the same, they get treated the same, they live in the same house, but they are 3 completely different children. From one's an academic, one just a chilled out vibe kid, one is a sports nut. And we understand through our program that, again, everyone at some point in their life wants to be a black belt. You've watched some movie, you have seen something on TV where for a quick second, being a black belt kind of came through your mind. And we understand that there's not all, one path. We have a regular, we call it a curriculum path. We just come to practice. You 2 to 3 times a week, you do your thing, you go home. It's a fun hobby for you. We have the competition path, which is obviously the fastest path, where you're proving yourself through competition. And then we also have a teaching path where once you hit a certain point, we have you volunteer and help out with other classes at the school, where you can earn credit for your ranks through the knowledge and the understanding of your sport. And well, like I said, with that giving back portion where you're giving back to the students and the school. So we have those 3 different paths, and we have some kids specifically who will do all 3, who want to come to practice because they love the sport, who want to compete because again, they're just have that little fire in their belly they're trying to keep, and they want to help out. And we have some kids who are here all day. They'll sit in an office, do their homework, get on the mat for their volunteer class, finish their homework, and then get back on the mat for training. And that's not because we're forcing them to. It's all volunteer based. It's nothing they have to do. It's something that they want to do. And we're so happy to have so many amazing families and kids just kind of come through and really make it their home. And that's what it should be. It should be another place where it's not just a place you're going to after school just to stay busy. It should be a place where you feel comfortable and you feel like you're part of a bigger community. And that's one thing, like I said, with helping out Woburn, whether it's the schools, the town, whatever, that it's important that we're all doing something together, right? We're all in this together because, like the other two guests mentioned, it has not been easy since COVID. So we really all need to be in a position where we're helping and picking each other up rather than trying to say, no, you got to come to me. It's like, no, that's not how it works right now. We need to do whatever we can to help each other stay afloat.
I love it. Last little thing before I let you go. Any special events or promotions or anything going on, that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, we have a bunch of events that we just recently did a Rise Above Bullying seminar, which was a free event for the community. We had about 25 kids here talking about taking a pledge to rise above bullying, to going over the 3 T's: talk, tell, tackle, the 3 T's of bullying. And then this Saturday, we're actually hosting a free self-defense seminar using jiu-jitsu, judo, and wrestling for realistic self-defense and tips and tactics to help keep you safe. And unfortunately, an ever-growing unsafe world, but it's always good to have that peace of mind that, if something does happen, you have at least 1 or 2 tricks up your sleeve to help keep you safe. So that's going to be this Saturday here at Fuji Martial Arts in Woburn. We're really excited to be, again, working with the community. And we're going to be doing a lot of things in 2022, whether it's internally for our own students, for the community. We're here to help serve with the community in whatever way we can.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. And Woburn, as always, please continue to take good care of each other.